are really fortunate to have esteemed scholars from the field of operations management and supply chain management. We have with us today Professor Anand Nair. He's the chair of the OSCM division at the Academy of Management and the professor of supply chain management and information management at Northeast University in the United States of America. We have also with us Professor Melanie Kreye, a professor of operations and supply chain management at the University of York in the United Kingdom. And also we have with us Dr. Jas Kalra, assistant professor of operations and supply chain management at the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for being with us today, our esteemed speakers. We will start with a presentation from an introduction about the OSCM division from Professor Anand, who will share some information about the division. Anand, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rima. I'm going to try to share my slides here. Give me few seconds here. For some reason, it's asking me for security and privacy for screen recordings, and I'm not sure why I'm not able to share the screen.
If you want, if you can share it with me and I can share it from my side.
Okay, I'll just send it to you, but I can start just, I'll quickly send it to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so on its way, sorry for the delay. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Great to be here. My name is Anand Nair. Just wanted to give you a short introduction while Rima receives this email that I have sent her. So as she said, I've been in this field of operations and supply chain management for a few years now. I'm now working at Northeastern University in Boston. Prior to this, I was at Michigan State, and before that at University of South Carolina. I do research in the areas of operation strategy, sourcing, and healthcare, retail are some of the domains that I focus on. So today, the objective for my being here is more about introducing you all with what all we are doing within this division, but also talk a little bit about the reviewing process for AOM, but also at large, how exactly the reviewing process might change coming in the coming days, and what we should be careful about. With that, I start the presentation. I mean, I hope that, Rima, you have received it by now or not?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So we will talk about the division, and once she receives it, wherever we are, we will reach that slide and we'll talk about that. So Academy of Management, it's a preeminent organization for management scholars. It's been around for a very long time, since 1936. So it has a strong foundation, long history, close to 18,000 members. So one of the largest organizations for academics. And these academics come from 120 countries. So it's quite wide spanning in its scope. And several divisions which actually focus their attention in the specific domain that they are in. So 26 different divisions and interest groups. There are 13,000 conference participants that we saw in 2026. So very large number of people also come and interact with each other. So among these 26, okay, there we are. Can make it a slideshow perhaps, and I'll just nudge you to keep moving to the next slide. I share. I don't think I can see the slides anymore. It was there for a brief moment.
Mm.
Yeah, there it is. So go to the second slide. I think we are there right now. Yeah, and just make it slideshow if that's okay. So as I said, there were 26 divisions and interest groups, and the operations and supply chain management division happens to be one of the founding divisions. Has been around for a very long time. Earlier, it used to be operations division, but now it's operations and supply chain management division. There are 774 members, and it's growing. So over time, we have grown in numbers. Last few years, bigger growth. The focus of this division is on empirical operations and supply chain management. So essentially, professors, scholars focusing on research that has empirical content in it come and present their papers, discuss different ideas, and go back and do their research. And then teaching related, pedagogical related discussions also are in the forefront in many of these conferences that we go and have meetings. So the focus is on how do we manage processes, how do we deliver products, how do we source these products in all kinds of organizations, manufacturing, service, not for profit, for profit, etc. Though it's empirical, we do have conceptual papers that also are considered where data might not be there, but it might be a good preliminary step for subsequent empirical investigation, as well as methodological contributions are encouraged where new innovations in methodology within the empirical side can be something which people can leverage on. Cross-disciplinary linkage in general, I think Academy of Management is quite active on that front. They want cross-disciplinary linkage, so that's something which we also try to do and engage with other divisions whenever possible, create sort of joint workshops, etc. So this shows the OSCM by region. You can see all the regions, how it's represented. Clearly, I mean, right now, there is a dominance of one region, but over time, we are seeing sort of enlargement of every division. And this is one of the exercises that we do as part of this ambassador program to create outreach across different regions, make it more visible as in what we do, so that there is interest and people can find value. Let's move to the next slide. So as part of this division, what all do we do? During the conference, there are several activities that are lined up. We do professional development workshops. There are consortiums, doctoral and junior faculty consortium, where they get mentoring. There's scholarly program, which includes all these different papers that people present. Typically, when you submit articles for Academy of Management, 50% acceptance rate is something which we are supposed to adhere to. So 50% papers go through the process and are actually presented, which means that if yours was accepted, it already says that your paper was of a good quality. Along with those papers, we also have meet the editors. We also have plenary session where we invite people from industry, from not-for-profit organizations, professional organizations, and talk about the future on certain topics that we would be interested in, how we should be thinking about them in our research and teaching. There are social events, so Sunday morning run, something where we also want to kind of have some informal gathering. A lot of awards, best paper awards, student as well as the overall division award. And then there are reviewer awards as well for good reviewers, encouraging them and and ensuring that we sort of exemplify those who do a good job. Those awards are also handed over. There are best 5% paper proceedings that actually ends up in a proceeding, which also can be cited. And finally, industry visits, which is something which we restarted recently and has seen a lot of interest in it, where we try to go to a site where the conference is organized. So we have been to in Chicago, we went to a place where they are doing digital manufacturing and the technology related investments, whether it's in blockchain or otherwise. How do these technology look like going forward in the future? Last year we went to the warehouse of a not-for-profit organization. This year we again have some plans. So every year we want to do something like this, so that we are in touch with practice, because I think operations and supply chain management is a division, a field which is very close to actually how work is done. So if you can be at the site, you get to see what actually happens there. Now, throughout the year, we also organize these kinds of webinars across different regions. We had one in Australia, we had in Latin America last month, and now this one. And then going forward, there will be others in Europe and other places. So this way, we are trying to reach out to our members, potential members across all regions. We also have this AOM online platform where we interact, share ideas, news, any calls for papers, new jobs, whatever that might be. That's where a lot of information is shared. We welcome a new member. We have a welcome a new member program that try to sort of link them with an existing member and then mentoring them through the process over a course of a year. And then we have a website where all this has been curated so you can see what we have been doing and what all information might be of value to you. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is the executive committee. We have elections through which executive committee is formed. So these are the 5 who are currently serving at different roles. We have a past division chair. Now there'll be division chair elect, program chair, and PDW chair. And some of these people you already know them. So I mean, I'm basically moving forward from here because obviously you will get to see them in different forums anyway. So we've been trying to do certain things, and next year we will have the past division chair moving out and a new PDW chair coming in. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is the committee members who do a lot of important work for us. We have a treasurer who takes care of all the accounts and funds and how we are doing with sponsorship, managing it with the Academy of Management's head office. We have we have a secretary and knowledge management specialist who takes care of knowledge repository that we want to preserve so that we know what we're doing. Then the regional ambassador coordinator, Meriem, who obviously is involved in this kind of initiatives, webinars and other things. So that's someone you must be knowing already. Communication coordinator, Iana is outgoing, and we have 2 new incoming coordinators. Actually, we have tried to create two different kinds of activities so that we can focus on important things. So Isis will be looking after the communications aspect, and Jess, who is also there with us, will be looking after the newsletter as an editor for that. So this way, we are trying to communicate what we're doing. We also have plans to engage through other social media platforms, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram, Facebook. But also these kinds of videos from webinars will be posted there so that people can peruse them over time, and that adds to the visibility. So that's sort of going forward, some additional things that will happen. Then we have the doctoral and junior faculty consortium coordinator, as I mentioned previous slide. So in this one, I was mentioning in conference, we have these consortiums. So we have a coordinator for that. There are 2 of them who jointly do it. And then finally, we have a membership committee, which we are reinstating again, so which will be formed, and we'll have a set of 3 members in that. Okay, next slide. These are our regional ambassadors. So Rima and Tariq are the MENA regional ambassadors. They are the ones who are organizing this and instrumental in setting this up and ensuring all of you are here. Likewise, we have members, the ambassadors in other regions as well. So we have Australia region, the two members are listed there. We have the Europe region again. Everywhere we have two members so that they can share the task, and one out goes out, the other one continues, so that there's also a proper hand holding to the next person who comes in. And likewise, Latin America, there's one, and then we have Asia region. Okay, next one. Now, for every conference, we try to seek sponsorship so that we can organize all these nice sessions. We can give these awards. So we do have generous sponsorship from a lot of organizations, universities, professional associations. And this is how we actually run our shows. So we have different sponsorship levels. Platinum is the highest level, followed by gold, silver, and bronze. So, in case your university joins us in this sponsorship, that'll be a great way to also showcase you as part of this conference and make that visibility across so many people who come in. Okay, next slide. So what can you gain from the membership with this division? Obviously, networking with such a large group of people, not only with operations, supply chain management, academics, but also other areas as well. In fact, when I started after my PhD and during my doctoral program, I found that to be very valuable, that I'm there in my home division, but I also get to interact with other divisions which might be of interest from my research and teaching perspective. Some constructive feedback on your full paper, because every paper goes through a review. You get reviewer recommendations, and that can be the basis for making it better so that you can submit it in a journal. International recognition, you can find a job, because a lot of job postings here. Build your research, review experience, because this way you get to actually start the review process and get some understanding of how well you did. If you get an award, that actually also showcases that you are doing a good job. Volunteer, obviously, that's something which we would like you to consider. Volunteering helps you develop your leadership skills, but also get more engaged with what we're doing. And then receive some publishing tips when editors are there in that session. They tell you what their journals are thinking about and what you should be thinking in terms of writing a paper for them. And then make friends above all, because that's something which is also important. So when you come here, you get to meet new people, make friends, and then it can be long lasting friendship. Go ahead. Next one. So our next annual meeting is going to be in Philadelphia. It's in August. So I hope that's actually July and August. But it'll be a fun place, a lot of history, a lot of interesting sessions, like always. And there will be site visit, plenary session, and everything. So I hope that you will consider coming there. And then after that, we have one in Seattle, which will be a year after. So that's the sort of next 2 years of annual meetings. So hopefully you'll consider coming for these conferences. Next. And I mentioned about what all we do in the conference. So this is the faculty, junior faculty and doctoral consortium. This is a good one for anybody who is starting out as a faculty or who are still doctoral students, because this happens before the actual conference begins every Friday, just before the conference. I mean, it's actually part of the conference, but Friday of the annual meeting. This consortium is organized where there are mentors and there are faculty members. So last year we had 40 junior faculty and doctoral students being mentored by 15 to 20 mentors. So a lot of things happen here. You have networking, learning from the giants, where a distinguished scholar will come and talk about things that might be of interest. The ethical dilemma game that happened last time, career development session, some research incubator where small groups and mentors came together and thought about potential research ideas that can be developed. And that's a list of mentors. So we can see that there are some, strong researchers, strong contributors to the field who have been participating in it for a long time. Next slide. The new member program is an important one. We again started this where we welcome new members. We pair them with an experienced one. They meet at least once online or in person before coming for Academy of Management. Then at the management conference, we have a new member cafe. Every new member gets to meet each other. And then we are now also trying to build this in such a way that there's almost a year-long connection between the mentor and the new member. So there are some activities that are in place to make this stronger. So that's an example of 2025 situation where we had 46 new members and 23 experienced members who were paired. So per member, there were 2 new members. So this helps a lot in sort of slowly getting into the rhythm of things in the conference as well as at this division. Next slide. Some pictures from our recently organized conference. So a lot of sessions, the site visit, everything else. So that's where I would like to end. And I'd like to thank you for your attention to this presentation. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have now or later. Uh, um, just let me know.
Thank you very much, Anand, for your presentation and for introducing the OSCM division. Now we will move to Melanie presentation. So Melanie, she's a professor, she's a professor of the operations and supply chain management at the University of York. She received the Best Reviewer Award in 2025 from the OSCM division last year. And her research focuses on service, sustainability, and she published in leading journals. And she also have editorial experience as associate editor at the IJOPM journal. Thank you very much, Melanie, and the floor is yours. And if you'd like to share any slides, we can share it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me and for that lovely introduction. I'm very excited to be here and talk a little bit about reviewing, something that we don't necessarily talk too much about, and we always kind of quietly expect everybody to do without necessarily having some form of training. As part of my academic career, and also particularly in preparing for today, I was thinking a little bit about sort of what is important for me as a reviewer. What do I want as a reviewer? What kind of skills do I need as a reviewer? One thing that I found comes very easy to me, that comes very natural to me, is the sort of the ability to criticize, the ability to look through a paper, read a paper, and find issues with it, find areas that I can kind of, where I say I would do this differently, this is not quite right, or would, this should come differently. I think that probably doesn't just apply to me. I think that's something that sort of characterizes us as academics. I certainly still see some reviews that are very much written with that in mind. But when I was still starting out as a career as an academic, I was participating in a paper development workshop with an editor, senior editor or editor-in-chief of one of the high-ranking journals. And we were also trained to review other colleagues' work. And as part of that, I very diligently prepared, read the paper in detail, prepared my comments, and then we were asked to present these comments to our colleagues in the workshop session. And I diligently presented my criticism, I presented my view on the paper, and then I was asked by the editor-in-chief, that is great, that these are all very valid comments, these are all sort of good comments, good points of criticism. Now please deliver them as if there's a human on the other side. And that was a moment for me where it's, I still smile when I look back at this, where it's, oftentimes we talk about the review system. There's a system and it's sort of dehumanized, that on the other side, there is an author who's worked often years, at least months, often years, on writing the paper, on collecting the data, on writing the paper up, revising it, etc., etc. And that person has put a significant amount of work into this. And we sometimes forget that there's a human on the other side. So a lot of the things that I have worked on since then basically come from that idea that there is a person on the other side. They have high hopes with the paper that they submitted. They have, they've put a lot of their heart, a lot of their sweat, a lot of their hope into that. So how can we deliver a review that actually considers that and doesn't just criticize and present the criticism and everything that's wrong with the paper. So what I do as a starting point there is I try to identify what is the potential of that paper. What do I see as the potential value in that paper? But sometimes that's easier where the authors are very clear on what that potential value is and can very clearly identify that. And that I specifically use a different term than the contribution, more sort of what's the central idea? Where do I see the potential in that paper? Does it have a strong data set, maybe even a unique data set? Does it have a really core idea that's actually an interesting conundrum that I hadn't thought about before, that I think finding an answer to would be really interesting. So what is that value of the paper? And I try to write that down to start my review of that. This is where I see what I see the idea of the paper is and where the potential value of that paper is. Oftentimes I find the core idea is a really good one. I very rarely have to find that the idea is something that's been done over and over again or is simply not interesting. Most of the time, the idea is a really interesting one. And then the way it's being implemented or the way it's being written up is not quite there. But oftentimes the idea, the central idea is really interesting. And that also reflects that by the time papers come to review, an author or the authors will have written on that, will have worked on this for a long, long time. I think where next to that, then it comes quite easy to kind of, where's that potential not quite met? Where's the points of criticism? Again, that comes quite easy. But one thing the next thing that I try to do when writing a review is then trying to make concrete suggestions for improvement. And those are typically really just suggestions based on my interpretation of what the value is, based on my interpretation of what the focus of the paper is. This is where I would drive it. This is where I think the next steps is. And this is for me really trying to meet the authors where they are in that paper writing process. So if it's very mature, you really just need to raise a few minor points. If the paper is still relatively immature, which does sometimes, especially in a conference submission such as the AOM annual meeting, papers wouldn't necessarily be very mature yet. Then you sort of, you take the author. So this is where you are right now. The next step for you would be, say, refine the research focus because you're trying to go too big or you're trying to go too narrow. Wherever it is, wherever the starting point is, really trying to think about what is the next step for the authors. If I were one of the authors, if this was one of my papers, and I'm able to look at my own work with a third pair of eyes, then this is where the next step should be. So really where I would recommend the authors when they get the review back, what they should do next. And then sort of going from in terms of suggestions and on where to put this forward. And I think this typically then is the good chunk of the work of a reviewer done. From that side, coming up with a recommendation on whether it should be accepted, rejected, major corrections, minor corrections, wherever that might be. That is even just a sort of reflection on what is the outlet that I'm reviewing for. Is it how does the paper that I'm reviewing compare to what I expect to see in that outlet? And that is really just a recommendation for me as the reviewer. I see that very much. That's the role of the editor, of being able to judge what, based on all of the criticism, not just from that one reviewer or other reviewers, and how far does that match the outlet that we're looking for? Does the reviewer, would the authors benefit from being able to present the paper and being able to discuss the paper at the conference, or is this something that we want to see in this journal? So that's really just it's almost just a minor thing. It's the first thing that try to be quite careful about, because it's the first thing that the authors see, and that's the first thing that can crush their hopes and can really ruin their day if it's the wrong kind of answer. But in the review process, it's a very minor thing. For me, the major thing is writing up the review and writing the review in a way that is actually helpful to the authors and developing the work further. And one last point I want to make relates to that's obviously quite a lot of, I want to say, mental and creative effort. You have to think your way as a reviewer, you have to think your way into the shoes of the authors, you have to think your way into what might not be on the page, but is actually part of the paper or part of the paper development. Me as a reviewer, I also expect to a degree that the authors similarly take the review comments seriously when revising their paper and when addressing the revisions. And that is often not, so I don't necessarily expect them to pay lip service and thank me for every comment, etc., but understand what was behind it, and also understand that the reviewer is a person. So when they address a comment or when they respond to a comment, that the reviewer also put a lot of effort into writing that review and writing the and reviewing the paper in the first place. So I expect similar courtesy from the authors in response. That's also not often the case, or not always the case, let's put it that way. So these are the main points I wanted to make in the introduction to reviewing and reviewer skills, is seeing the human on the other side, not just criticizing, but seeing the potential in the paper, making concrete suggestions on what the next steps for improving the papers are, wherever the paper is at the moment, but also in response for authors taking reviewers' time and reviewers' comments seriously and really trying to understand them. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And I really like what you mentioned and the tips that you shared. In particular, like thinking about a constructive way to communicate, and also like highlighting the value and what's the next step, which will be really definitely helpful for the authors. Thank you so much, Melanie. And now I would like to invite Jas Kalra for sharing the presentation about his tips of how to master the review process and the professional part, and the ethical side of the review. The floor is yours, Jas.
Right. Thank you, Rima. Hi, everyone. My name is Jas Kalra. I'm an assistant professor in operations and supply chain management at University of Manchester, and I'm very grateful to be invited here, and really looking forward to speaking about some elements of the reviewing process. So before I start, I'll share my screen and see if it works. Right. Can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yeah, we
Fantastic.
can
Fantastic.
see it. Thank you so
Right.
much.
So I will be talking about concurring with a lot of points that Anand and Melanie have already raised, but also talking about some of the ideas around professionalism, ethics, and you know, as an ECR, the career value of reviewing. What can it also give you back as a reviewer? So I'll be talking through some of those things. So what is peer review for me? So peer review for me is a form of professional service. So professional service, as you know, like it's, you know, it's a combination of, it started from, you know, being accounting, being a lawyer, being a management consultant, being a doctor. So that kind of knowledge intensive service, that's how I view reviewing as. And when you are delivering this peer review as a service, you are being a trusted advisor. And those who look at professional services, they know what I'm talking about. So who are you providing this advice to? So the editors, and by extension, the authors, they, even though they don't know you, because it's double blind peer review, they are trusting you with their work. So, and they are trusting you to look at it without any bias, look at it at uh, on the plane of its own excellence, and then tell them, does it work or what can work? So that is how I approach this, that this is a service that I'm providing. Again, there are two models of providing professional service, particularly the ones that apply here. One is the expert model, where, okay, this paper has come to me, I'm the expert, I can tell you what works and what doesn't work. But also increasingly, I'm adopting, and some of the best reviews, the best processes as a reviewer I've been through, is this idea of social learning model, that yes, I am learning with the authors more about the work, and the authors are learning based on my comments, and we are developing, if there's something really interesting there, we are trying to develop the paper the best, in, you know, the best version of that paper that it could be, right? So that's the service part, but what else is important here? So you are also the trustee of the discipline. I don't like the word gatekeeper, personally, but yeah, because that's not my job as a reviewer, that's more editor's job, that they have that burden, they have that responsibility. I'm a trustee. I'm looking at the quality, I'm seeing, okay, what does it work, does it add to our field, does it make what we like to call a theoretical contribution, or in some other journal, does it actually make a policy impact or a practitioner impact? Does it make that impact? What is it, what is there in the study that can advance our field. And also, it keeps the field credible, right? We are in a time when, and I'm slightly biased here, when supply chain and operations have never been more important, right? People are being called upon to fix supply chains, to improve how supply chains and operations work. So how do we contribute to that as academics, right? We do studies and we go through this peer review process. We are challenged by our peers, and they help us get to the truth. I mean, that's what academia is. It is the pursuit of truth. So what keeps it truthful? It is this peer review process. And I've seen a lot of criticism of peer review process, but I don't think an alternative model exists. Peer review is what keeps it all honest, particularly in social sciences, right? Also, for me, when I started out writing my own papers, I think the fastest I learned the way I learned to write papers was by reviewing. I found it the fastest way of developing this skill, this judgment skill, that okay, what is a good paper? What does a good paper look like, right? And what is a not so good paper look like? And I concur with, again, Melanie's experience, that I started out under well, at that time, my postdoc supervisor Jens, who gave me like, okay, what do you think about this paper? Talk to me. And then we used to have a meeting, and I used to talk to him about, okay, what does this review look like? What do I think? And then I learned a lot from it. So again, this is the fastest way to develop the capability. And I would encourage you to volunteer for journals that you want to publish in, right? If you want to publish in a journal, you want to understand that journal, send them an email, say that I would like to volunteer. You could be and I know there are some of the top journals in our field do allow that you could be a number 3 or a number 4 reviewer who can learn from that, right? And also, um, I think of review as an active dialogue. It's a dialogue between an active conversation with the authors that I'm having. So all my reviews are very conversational. I want to have that conversation. Okay, I'm not sure what the authors mean here, or actually, this is really interesting piece, and maybe authors can point me in that direction. I'm sure you have the data, or I'm not sure you have the data. So having that conversation, that back and forth, is something that's really encouraging. And also, I think of reviewing as a privilege. It is a privilege, because rather than seeing this as a service that you have to do, and I know, we academics, we are always burdened by so much overwork, but also it is an opportunity to see something in its first form, right? Somebody has done months and years worth of research, and you're going to see it in its first form. And hey, you might even be someone who helps them in shaping that into its final form. I mean, imagine having the first copy of Origin of Species in your hand. I mean, what a privilege, right? So again, I think of it like that, and that sort of keeps it exciting for me, that maybe this is the manuscript that 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 moves the field. And also you learn a lot, so that's the other thing. But again, so I've talked a lot about the professional part of it. There is a service element to it, right? So reviewing is a service job, and your job is to identify what will serve the paper, the author, the editor, what will serve the paper, right? It is not your paper. And I've had the comments, and I often resist the impulse to shape it in the direction that I want it to be shaped in. But also, what is this paper about, right? And that's the idea. And sometimes, and then your contribution, that service could be anything ranging from a semicolon or correcting a typo to suggesting a different theory, or actually finding that those small nuggets of contributions that they should be enabling, empowering in their paper, and that leads to that final paper. So that's how I see this peer review service as. Then the second point, which is again very, very important, is the idea of ethics. So what are some of the ethical considerations that you have to bear in mind as a reviewer? So confidentiality, paramount importance. I mean, that I know it goes without saying. It's a double blind process for a reason. You don't know who the reviewer author is, and author doesn't know who you are. So never say, and even though you contributed to publishing of that manuscript, never go and say to the author, "Oh, I like that paper. I was one of the reviewers." I mean, that doesn't serve. But also, in no way should the confidentiality of the reviewing process be compromised. And with this whole idea of ChatGPT, Gen AI, it has become even more important. If you go into, the clear disclaimers these models provide, you shouldn't be uploading anyone's papers on it and trying to understand what they are. You're genuinely compromising the integrity of a discipline and their work as well. Also, as part of the ethics is professional courtesy and respect. Be polite. Be respectful. As Melanie said, there's a human on the other end, right? So don't, even though this process is sort of is slightly dehumanized, you are speaking to a human being. And in return, I mean, you are a human being as well. So kind of show that. So having that professional courtesy, professional respect is really, really important when you're writing a review, no matter how overworked you are and how the deep end you are. Another thing is important is that, am I the right person to do it? And that's a very loaded question. First of all, is there a conflict of interest? Now, if I know the authors, or if an author has suggested my name as a reviewer, and I just have a really clear ethical boundary there. So I inform the editor-in-chief, I know the person, and I know they actually send me an email before suggesting my name, so I don't want to do it. Or I have seen this paper in another form. I have actually seen it as I've done a friendly review of it. Keeping that explicit is very, very important. And sometimes editors do put guardrails around it and they say, okay, well then look at it that way, or actually maybe you're not the right person to review it, and that's absolutely fine. But keeping that conversation honest is really important. Competence. So I'm a qualitative researcher, deep qualitative researcher. So I get invitations to review a lot of quantitative papers as well. If it's outside the area of my expertise, I do tell the editor that I'm not the methods expert on this, and sometimes they just say, that's fine, we know. Focus on the theory, focus on the other parts of the paper. We will rely on someone else for the methods, but keeping it. But sometimes I also say, I am not sure about this paper. And then editors can guide you in the right direction. So that's very important. And third, biases. You are biased even if you don't think you are. So acknowledging it, being explicit about it, what your philosophical underpinnings are, what are your theoretical underpinnings. Just as long as you keep them in mind, you will not come in the way of the paper, right? And also, you will not let your favorite method or favorite paper or favorite theory win just because it's a bad paper. It could be a bad paper, but if it has your favorite theory, doesn't mean it's a good paper. So just keeping those biases very, very explicit is very important. And the final thing that I've also alluded to, don't, Gen AI is tempting, but putting paper in there, I mean, I have tested that, and I can, at least as far as I see, maybe I'm bad at prompting or whatever, but it's not only dehumanize, it gives you a very bad version of a review. And why would you want to do that, right? You're reading someone's work, it's exciting. Why would you want to put it in ChatGPT, which is a very standardized model of something, right? It averages everything out, which I don't like. So, and also it is often wrong. In my experience, it is often wrong. It wastes more time than it saves you, at least in my my world. Right. Professionalism. How can you keep it professional? Be an avid reader. If you're an avid, if you're not a reader, you shouldn't be a reviewer. So, reading is very important. And, if that's your natural interest, you will go do well as a reviewer. Again, be polite. I'm emphasizing it again and again. But yes, politeness is really, really important. Be responsive. Don't let the editors wait a month before you respond to their invitation. That's really bad form. And be punctual, right? But also, sometimes you can't be punctual. And there have been times that I'm busy marking or something. I don't abuse this privilege, but I do sometimes reach out to editor and say that, can I have an extra week, or can I have 3 more days? And I promise I will give my review. They have been more helpful than I thought they would be. They have understood. They have said, okay, you of course, take a week. Just give me back your review. So just keeping everyone aware of what your timelines are and when you can do it, within reason, of course, is very, very useful. So please do that. And also, having said all of this, I know it is an extra bit of work. Being very careful about the work-life balance is very important. The reason I say work-life balance is that, you're researching, you're teaching, and now you're reviewing, which, we'll get to it, but they say, well, it's an unpaid labor. Well, yes, but then so be very mindful of the time. Don't say yes to everything, but also don't take it as a last thing. It is a very important part of your job. I think there should. I was speaking with Jens the other day, and he said that you should be reviewing two papers for every one paper that you submit. I mean, that should be thing. I mean, it's a broad expectation, but yeah, it's a good thing to have in your mind. Yeah. And then this is my final slide, second last slide, which is career value, how it has benefited me. So of course, saying it again, fastest way to build that skill, fastest way to build that capability on what a good paper versus a bad paper looks like. I have learned a lot about writing by reviewing. So that's been an important thing for me. And reputation. They say it is an invisible labor, and I see where they're coming from, but in some ways, this has given me a lot more visibility than more. I mean, it could be because of the awards, but also once you once you are developing reviews in the correct way, or at least you're being sincere, you do develop a reputation, right? So I mean that has opened more doors for me than anything. As a reviewing a lot, so there is, as an ECR, there is value in it. So please do that. Also, one thing that I always do, and this is a suggestion, that when you receive the review report, read your comments, read other reviewers' comment, read the editor's comments. You will learn a lot, and you will improve as a reviewer. So you will see everyone else's comments as well. And finally, yes, it gives you access to new ideas. And I know, yeah, we ideas are the currency. This is something that we all trade in as academics, right? So, sorry, I think there's a um, right. So yeah, it gives you access to ideas, more and more ideas, but also it gives access to people. So that's really important. That has given me a lot of value over the years as a reviewer. Now, this is the final slide I leave you with. And this is a quote by one of my favorite people in the world, who's not with us anymore, Robert Gottlieb. He was one of the best editors that to ever exist in this world. And what he says, when you try to change something into that it isn't, right? Making it something else than it is supposed to be, rather than making it better at what it is, tragedy lurks. So it's very important to read the paper for what it is and not for what you think it should be, right? So yes, thank you very much for your time, and I'm very, very happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jas, for your insightful presentation. And also, I really like the idea of dealing with review as a professional service and how you manage the ethical part and the career part of that. Thank you so much. And finally, we will conclude with the editorial perspective. So after hearing tips from like how would you like handle how you would write the review and focus on constructive feedback. So what about the editorial perspective and what the editor is really expecting when receiving reviews? So I would like to invite Anand to share his insights into this part. And after that, we will open the floor for questions. Anand, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rima. And these were two great presentation on reviews. Both Melanie and Jess has provided such a deep insight into the review process. I'm going to present or talk about the editorial perspective, having served as the department editor in JOM and now and senior editor in production and operations management, but also as the program chair who's responsible for looking after all the reviews for the Academy of Management conference 2 years ago. So what happens when you are an editor is that you are sort of getting all these different reviews on a paper, and there could be a wide variance across the reviews, and the variance actually ends up being larger in a conference like Academy of Management compared to a journal, because in journal you have sort of history of that reviewer and therefore a lot more to sort of think about, which reviewer to choose and not. So essentially, as an editor, the goal is to look at it in an unbiased way and serve as sort of an unbiased referee, uh, understanding the perspectives that the reviewers may have taken. And both Melanie and Jess have highlighted the kinds of things that can go awry sometimes when you are reviewing. And those are things which you keep seeing, the reviewers expecting a new paper or expecting things from the authors that clearly are not doable, and it doesn't seem like fair at that point in time, given what the authors might have done. And sometimes it could be clearly an indication that this paper might be the right fit for another journal. Right? So there is an aspect of content quality, there is an aspect of the writing, how it has been done in terms of the conceptual idea as well as the methodological direction, and then the aspect of the fit with a specific journal. Every journal has certain way of thinking about research, so it's not necessary that every paper that you write will be the right fit for a specific journal. It might be good for another one. So as an editor, these are the things that are important for one, and I would evaluate each reviewer's comment, try to understand what that perspective was, where exactly the review is coming from. I'll also try to discount certain things which are like the ones that were mentioned earlier about the constructiveness versus not so constructive reviews. I would look for the constructive reviews in a more positive light and give a little more weight to that, where there is potentially an issue with that paper, but also a direction of what to do with it, as against just highlighting issues, because that's something which can always be done. And then uh, once that has been done, then a call has to be taken. So it cannot be counting beans by saying that two rejects. So it has to be reject, one revise and resubmit, and then the senior editor says revise and resubmit. So two revise and resubmit. So it should not be like that. Sometimes you step in and try to make a call which may be slightly different from the reviewers. But oftentimes you find that the review panel is sort of aligned. They all are professionals. They have all been doing this for some time. So essentially, they see the paper in the same light. The way they write could be different, but the final conclusion oftentimes ends up being quite close to each other. So there, I see something which is not as variant as probably the way it has been written. So then, as an editor, you always try to err on the side of authors. That would be my call. I always try to give the benefit of doubt to the authors if there is a close call, and see if there's an opportunity there for at least another round to see what they can come up with. But if it is a situation where there's a clear lack of fit, a lack of understanding in terms of how that data would be the right one, oftentimes there's also issue with terminologies being used by authors that are invented by themselves, where when there is already something which exists on those lights. So that means that the authors have not gone back and looked at the literature that actually has covered these kinds of things in a much deeper way. So there are few of those aspects that are red light for rejection. But otherwise, you always want to give the benefit of doubt to the authors and see if the paper can be brought to its final shape, a good shape, which can be then accepted. So I would stop there. I think it would be more valuable if people have questions and we can answer them rather than presenting it one way, because we have obviously a paucity of time here.
Thank you so much, Anand, for your insightful presentation. I would like first to open the floor for any questions from the audience. If you'd like to open your mic or write in the chat, so feel free to share your questions and raise your hand if you want. Meriem, do we have any questions in the chat? Okay, we have Fahim. Please, Fahim.
Hello. I have two quick questions I was hoping to ask. I'll start with the shorter one. So the last thing, okay, so it's to do with the trap some may fall into, where they may they may create a term or a construct or a concept that may already exist in the literature. And I was just sort of wondering that, because for my dissertation, which I'm hoping to get published, what I want to do is try and create a new construct. And I'm just trying to think ahead of time here. So I've already tried to check the literature to make sure this doesn't exist. But do you have any advice for how I could double check and make sure that I'm not accidentally maybe mixing two constructs or concepts that already exist, or I'm just, creating a term that already exists? So that's one of my questions I'd like to have.
Yeah. We can, if you want to say the next questions,
Oh,
and then we can have the
sorry.
answers.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so for the second question, um, okay, so this is in regards to getting published itself. So, like, I understand that with that process, peer review is like absolutely necessary. And a concern I have as a student, I'm trying to think ahead as well. If you have any advice for what I could do to make sure that the work that I'm creating has the greatest chance, like for it to come off the right way. So for my key like ideas to be communicated well, so that I can have a smooth process when I'm being reviewed. So like that's that. I also have another thing I wanted to ask as well, which was about sort of the I'm so sorry. It's about the OSCM itself. Um, so like what also from just Professor Jas Kal Kalra's point about how reviewing papers had helped learn what makes a really good paper. I was wondering if there may be advice similar to that that a student may try and follow. So while we may not be able to, maybe we're not able to review ourselves, if there's something similar that we might be able to do, but that goes beyond just like reading papers, or if there's like a certain resource that might be recommended. And also, like I noticed that with OSCM, there are, like you mentioned, like it was mentioned earlier, that there are volunteering opportunities. And I was sort of wondering, I'm not sure if students may be a bit too underqualified, but would it be possible for them to apply for volunteering or some sort of shadowing type of experience, or to access some resources so that they can try and understand how reviewers think and how academics think, so that they can use this to guide them in this process? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fahim. So, anyone would like to answer the question? So, we have a question about the constructs and how to make sure that the construct is exist or not exist. Another one, how to write it or make sure that the research is publishable in a good journal. And the third one is more about the OSCM opportunities, especially about volunteering. So, anyone from the panelists would like to address any of the questions mentioned by Fahim.
I can take the last one first,
Yeah.
because that's sort of straightforward. There are a lot of reviewing volunteering opportunities for doctoral students, junior faculty. So I think the best way to start the process of reviewing would be potentially through a conference like this, where you get to see full papers. You're not yet there in the editorial boards, journal editors don't yet know you, but this is one way you can showcase that you actually can review. So there is always a call for reviewers right after the conference deadline is over. So you will receive that if you're a member. If you're not, joining the division of obviously helps, getting that email. You volunteer for that review, and then when you review, you get to see not only your review in the end, but you also get to see what other reviewer has submitted when paper eventually gets accepted or not. So this way, it'll be the first sort of entry into the reviewing volunteer role, and that's an important volunteer role, actually, very important volunteer role, because it helps the program chair decide which papers should go in the conference and which one should not. 50% chance of every paper getting in, and as a reviewer, you also get to sort of fine tune your skills, also make yourself visible by doing this, contribute to the profession and learn from other reviewers who may be more advanced, who may have already done some reviews. So you get to see how yours was relative to the other one. But I have to say this, that in conferences, the variance is very high. So it's possible that you might end up seeing another review which are also not all that great. So you would not be learning too much about it, but at least you get a chance. You get to see that. And the editor and the program chair is another person you can always reach out to and ask what kind of things can be improved in that review, and they will be very much willing to respond on that. So that's where I would say a strong volunteering opportunity exists. There are other opportunities as well to contribute within OSCM division. We keep coming out with different kinds of roles that we want. Ambassadors, they are reaching out to see if there are things that you can do. You can contribute in some way in the webinars by co-creating some small session in it, which might be of value for the region. There are all these other things that can also be done. So these are what I would suggest.
Thank you so much, Anand. Melanie or Jas, would you like to answer the other two questions?
Can I go first, Jas? I think the other two questions are kind of related, so my answer to them is also related. I want to take the concept question first. I think this is one of the skills that's actually quite important to develop as an academic, both in terms of writing, but also in terms of reviewing, and where reviewing is actually really helping you move forward, as Jas was presenting, is being a bit critical about, or trying to be critical as much as that's possible when you're the one who's writing the paper and who's championing the idea. But trying at some point, when you can, to take a step back and look at your own work with a critical eye. This is a really difficult thing to do. It's a really difficult skill to develop. I'm certainly still developing, and I've been doing this for a year or two, but it's sort of trying to look at answering the question of why is this needed in the first place? What does the concept allow the academic community to do? Why is it needed? What can we do with having it? What can we do better with this? And force yourself to identify, I would want to say, at least 3 other concepts, possibly more, as many as you can, and answer the question of how does my concept relate to them? How does it, how is it different? How does it build on some of these works? And I think answering these 2 questions, going through these exercises in a serious way, in an in-depth way, you will develop probably your concept further. And I would imagine the paper might end up not being the introduction of a new concept, but the exploration of a new problem that needs us to think about something differently, and or to expand our existing thinking about something and our existing frameworks on this. So I think those would be the skills, or what you can do with your team of supervisors, or with other people at your university. And I think related to that, and if you find that too difficult to do, that's really a difficult thing to do. Get friendly reviews. Get the first point of call would probably be either your supervisor or your mentor, or your the next person next senior to you at your university to get a friendly review. Colleagues who might be able to give you a friendly review. Maybe external people who you've networked with at a conference, to be able to give you a friendly review, and with that a more honest answer, or a more elaborately honest answer that is given in an interpersonal way, rather than through a written review, that can help you develop that further, and through that probably identify also whether the concept is actually needed, whether it's really new, etc., etc. So I think that's why these 2 answers are related. I think seek feedback on your own work as much as possible as you're trying to give feedback to others, and honor that connection with others, to give them feedback on their work as well.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Jas, would you like to add any point or?
No, I think Melanie summed it up perfectly. It was exactly what I was going to say. Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Any other question from the audience? Yeah, I have a question just for you. Maybe one question. Maybe this would also address different things. Oh, we have one question just before I go. So let's go for Soup.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much for this wonderful session. I just have one question, because we academics are very busy with the many tasks. So how much time we should spend on a review? Is that considerable time? Because very difficult to manage that time. So that's why I have just one question, because not only from the conferences, there are the reviews coming from different journals as well. So this is just a simple question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, time management elements. So anyone would like to address this question?
I can try. So I mean, I think every academic goes through that phase where initially it seems overwhelming. So you first of all have to accept that it's not just you, everybody is actually facing similar situation. But if you think of it more like a learning opportunity, which basically means obviously you have to balance your work and life, but if you think of this as a learning opportunity, and every time you are stepping in there, it's a time that you have used for building yourself, not only as a strong reviewer, but actually as a good researcher, right? So if you use that sort of a thought, that when I'm reading a paper, I'm actually building myself as a strong researcher. That would be at least one way you can ease the pain, so to say, make it easier to sort of accept some reviews. Having said that, I do agree that sometimes sort of putting you out there for every potential journal makes it difficult. So you have to pick your battles. You have to choose which type of journals you want to be an author in, and which professional associations you want to be related to, and people should know you. In those areas, you definitely want to kind of shine and show that you exist and you do a great job. So there is some places where you have to say no, and there are some places where you have to say yes. So deciding which ones should be the yes is a personal choice, right? Every person will decide based on what they want to target and what their outlook is in the long run. So that's how I would say that first decide where to say no, but wherever you say yes, you believe that you accept that others are also going through similar situation, and use it more like an opportunity to learn and make yourself visible, because visibility comes through such small steps, right? Eventually will people will know, and you get to so for example, Academy of Management review opportunity will potentially give you a chance to get the reviewer award, which then makes you visible with editors. You can then choose which journal you want to actually target and consider, and so on and so forth. So it's sort of, it's a virtuous cycle in my mind.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Professor Anand. It's helpful.
Thank you so much. Joanna? Joanna? So,
Hello.
Sister, like,
Yes.
yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. It's very significant, especially for me, because I'm in my second year of my PhD and I haven't reviewed before any paper, but I got 3 papers to review for the annual meeting, and I'm really excited to read the papers. I just want to. Do you have like a practical tips? How do you actually like read every manuscript? Like, do you do first like 3 hours of reading and take a little bit of break, or do you just read the whole manuscript? I have so just like a practical tips of. Do you take it every section, for example, and then comments on that, or yeah? Thank
I
you.
definitely would like to thank you, Joanna, but I'd let Melanie and just respond on that first. But thank you for accepting those review invitations.
Yeah, maybe I go first again. Jess, you haven't said anything yet. Do you want to go?
I can follow you. You go first, and I'll go after. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I want to say probably a journal review, a level of review, probably takes about half a day. So it's certainly a significant amount of time. And I've experimented with different ways of doing it, depending on how I like to do it myself. Typically, I just read it for the first one read through. I just read through, and then I have a separate document open where I just almost just dump every thought that I have on it. And most of these comments never find it into the review. But this is exactly the sort of like, I find criticism comes easy to me. So these sorts of things, oh, I wonder if they've actually done this, or this doesn't sound like quite right. These sorts of thoughts, I just collect them. Then I just have almost just a few pages of just dumped text. And then I've experimented with closing all of that, letting that sit, and then coming back to the next day in order to be able to write a constructive review. That hasn't worked for me so well, because then I start thinking about it, it in my own mind when I'm at home making dinner or whatever, and I didn't find that too nice. So I started then sort of actually taking a little bit of a break, and then actually starting to write basically on the thought process that I laid out, starting to write a constructive review with changing the mind of what's the potential here, what's the, where would I see the suggestions for revising the paper and for taking it next. So it is a significant time commitment, and I would suggest experiment with different ways and see what works best for you, for your own work-life balance, so that you don't take this stuff home with you and that it affects your own mental well-being, but that you can also actually write constructively and do the kind of review that you would then afterwards be proud of having delivered.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Jas, please.
Yes. So I'll start with, again, saying exactly what Melanie said, that I, when a review comes to me, there is this temptation, I want to read it immediately, but so I just skim it essentially by the first weekend of when I've received the review. So I just skim read it, but I don't make judgments. I reserve judgment. I just want to know what this paper is, what they have found. Again, genuine curiosity is more where I'm coming from at that time, and then I put it away. I mean, that's a suggestion I've always gotten from a senior scholars as well, that they just put it away. Sometimes also because you have to read the literature that they have cited to be able to give a more informed comment. Some days, if I know the field very well, I will do it. Other days, I need to go away and read some of that literature, and some, that could be useful in many other ways as well. And then 1 week before the deadline, I come back to it again. By that time, of course, I have made notes, I've written memos to it, and I use them and I read it again. And then by that time, you have formed a lot more informed judgment. In my case, almost always. I mean, these days I can sort of see very quickly where this paper is going in my first reading as well. But mostly I give it time to say that, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Or actually, I was so thoroughly impressed by the abstract and the contributions, but now that I'm looking into the findings and methods, maybe it's not quite there yet, and there's a lot more to be done. So I think saying that going 2 rounds, having 2 goes at it is something that I would recommend. Also setting time in your calendar. Set it as an appointment, like you would reading a literature or writing a paper. If you put it in your diary, you have a likelier chance of doing it rather than putting it till the last day of submitting the review.
Thank you so much.
I can add another perspective in it. I mean, I think both of those are very relevant, and it's always individual. And you're a second-year student, as I understand. Obviously, the process of going through the doctoral program is where you learn to read papers relatively fast. That's the expectation, that you're reading a lot of papers and you have to be good at reading papers fast. At least in its first cut. So as was mentioned, I would take a paper, and I know that the most difficult part of the paper that one spends a lot of time reviewing is the methods, because that's where every paper has 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. That inspiration is the idea, which is about the motivation, why they're doing it, and oftentimes that is quite easily sort of understood from the introduction, and later on also from the discussion and conclusion. So what I would do is, at least when I skim it, I give a little bit more importance to introduction and what the discussion and conclusion is in terms of implications the study has. But I know that that's capturing the inspiration of the study, right? It's basically capturing the inspiration, but I want to see what exactly they did to really ensure that it was done well, because ultimately as academics, we are beyond consultants in that regard, that we don't want to just hand wave. We also want to show that we have done some real deep thinking in it and done some good analysis of whichever kind, whether qualitative or quantitative. So I leave that part alone for the first time. I also leave the literature review, assuming that the authors would have taken their time and actually done a good review of the literature at that first reading. But that time I would make a sort of my thoughts on whether the inspiration was there, and is it an interesting idea, a new idea, something which is really intriguing. And oftentimes that a lot of people pass that stage, right? And most of the papers have a very nice idea and interesting way of thinking about it. The next step, I normally don't I don't leave it alone and just move on to other things and come back to it. I typically would want to continue with that second stage right away. because I know, okay, I've given this particular paper very high marks on the inspiration side. Now let's see how much they have spent on the perspiration side, the actual, the groundwork, the back end of it. And that's where I now focus a lot attention, and I try to make my notes mostly about the center of the paper, what they actually did. Right? That's where I make most of my notes first, to ensure that this is what they actually did to achieve the outcome. They did mention whatever the outcome is, what their intentions were, and that's after that is where I go and step out and start thinking about how much did they really do. What exactly did they do here? Was that a deep thinking? Was that a deep analysis, really robust? Rigor was there, relevance was there. So those kinds of things I start thinking after I have taken the notes of the middle part, right after that. And then I maybe take that paper the next day or the same evening and start writing my review on that paper. So essentially, it's by now I can do it relatively fast, but I would say a half a day, if you have planned over multiple days or just one day, you could manage the process. And I would also say that, see, we use, so agentic AI or AI in general, it has gotten a lot of bad repo, but I think it can be valuable if done correctly. Right? There is some value in using some of the AI tools as your sort of research assistant, especially in the case of literature review. As long as you ensure that you have validated those papers that the paper has mentioned, and you don't know that literature very well. It happens many times that you're getting a paper where you are not really involved in that area of research, but you want to learn about that as quickly as possible so that you can provide the right feedback to the authors. But now, if you were to go and read every paper in that particular domain, it'll take a lot of time to actually go through that process. And this is where I see some value in the AI tools that can expedite that process of understanding the literature. You still have to ensure that it's valid papers, that because they hallucinate and they'll give you some papers that don't exist. You have to make sure that these papers do exist, and you use that as a way to understand that a domain as quickly as possible. But then your focus is more on how well they have done it, right? Because the authors will be still better experts on that particular topic, that particular literature than you, because they have gone through that literature and that's their area of focus. Yours is not. So this is where I think sometimes AI can be also helpful in managing the time, but you don't want to be over relying on it. You still have to do your job in the rest of the things, except for literature review, where you can potentially use some advantage from AI.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank you so much, Ivana. We have a question in the chat is about the AOM reviewers, and this is from Troy. The question is about who reviews the Academy of Management reviewers' comments, and what process do they use to assess the credibility and visibility and viability, sorry, of the review. So it's about the review process for the conference.
So the review process is such where the program chair is responsible for soliciting the reviews and then going over the reviews and almost acting as an editor. Right? So they're the ones who are going to be going over all the reviews and understanding what the reviewers are saying and taking a decision about the paper, accept or reject. There's no revise and resubmit concept here, so it's basically accept or reject. So in the conference, it'll be a binary. There's also some divisions have started having associate editor sort of a role, who help the program chair to do the job. So far, we have not done that. So far, the program chair takes care of it. So in our division, it's the program chair. So this year it'll be Katie, who is the program chair, who will be soliciting all the reviewers and then looking at the reviews and then deciding the paper. So whether the paper should go through or not.
Thank you so much, Anand. Yeah, I think there's no other questions from the audience. Yeah, so thank you so much for your insightful presentations and for addressing all the questions from the audience. I learned so much from this session, and there's a lot of tips. I'm sure the audience also learned a lot from this session. And I think this topic will need even more and more sessions, especially when talking about the role of AI and different kind of tools that we can use, but also the how to actually write the reviews in details and so on. So thank you so much for the insightful presentation and for sharing your experience with the audience. Mariam, would you like to add any point or say anything?
No, I just want to say thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being with us today. Thank you very much.
And
Thank you.
Thank you.
we shared the link for the post-webinar survey in the chat. And yeah, please, we welcome your feedback for this webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Are you
Thank you
sending
so
the
much.
survey now before you close
Thank
it?
you.
Yeah,
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 it's already on the chat.
Okay, all
it's
right,
on
thank
the
you.
chat, yeah. And
Thanks.
I can, and also I can share it as on the screen if this helps to have the QR code. Yeah, so I mean, we will